Welcome to The Explainer. So if you're an expat living in France, or hey, maybe you've just considered making the move, you're probably intimately familiar with a very specific, universal feeling of dread. Picture this. It's 5:30 in the afternoon. You've just come back from a lovely walk, maybe a quick run to the boulangerie. You check the mail, and there it is. Right there, sitting amongst the grocery flyers, is a brown envelope, and its window displays your name, printed in that unmistakable 40-year-old dot matrix font that the French state just loves to use. Today, we're decoding the absolute ultimate antagonist of French expat life, the administrative postal system. And we'll be looking at a really elegant new solution designed specifically to tackle it.
So you take the envelope into the living room, right? You open it up slowly. Your eyes scan down this single sheet of paper, desperately looking for context clues, and bam, you hit a solid paragraph of dense, archaic French. It translates roughly to demanding your last 3 pay slips and your tax notice within a fortnight, or else, and here's the kicker, your benefits will be suspended. Now, reading this at 5:30 p.m. induces a very specific, kind of slightly anxious feeling. You don't necessarily panic, right? You've been in France way too long for that. But you do freeze. You realize something is being demanded of you, there's a deadline, and there are absolutely consequences. But the exact details, they just remain frustratingly murky.
And this leads us perfectly to what the source material brilliantly calls the slightly anxious minute. The core problem in this exact moment isn't sheer panic. No. It's that immediate mental calculation of exactly how much of your evening, or worse, your upcoming weekend, this single brown dot matrix envelope is about to completely ruin. Are you supposed to open your laptop right now? Do you need to call your accountant? Should you just wait for your partner to get home? It's a moment of real friction that totally interrupts your life.
Okay, let's dive right into this. The source material breaks down these main administrative antagonists into what we can essentially call the Big Four. First up, we've got the CAF, which handles family and housing aid. These letters induce high dread, mainly because they demand evidence on super short notice, and they can ask for literally thousands of euros back. Then there are the Impôts, the tax authority. Now, they actually use a surprisingly friendly tone, but the stakes are incredibly high, meaning you absolutely must reply promptly. Next is URSSAF. That's the social security body for the self-employed. Totally notorious for mathematically dense tables and delayed billing that can trigger sudden, massive financial crises. And finally, CPAM, the health system. It's definitely less scary, but it is full of long delays and really high friction for your reimbursements. Knowing which of these four is writing to you just on site, that is literally the basic literacy of living in France.
Now you might be wondering, well, why not just learn French? But here's the thing, simply learning the language doesn't actually solve the problem. French administrative correspondence uses this completely distinct bureaucratic dialect. I mean, words like forclusion or dégrèvement, they just aren't taught in any standard language courses. In fact, even native French speakers completely struggle with this specific dialect. You could walk into literally any local cafe, ask the native French customers what a particular administrative term means, and I guarantee you'll get 5 different totally confused answers. It's just a totally different register, hyper-focused on procedural consequences.
So naturally, your very first instinct is probably to pull out Google Translate. But there's a massive, massive gap between translation and true comprehension. A translator accurately gives you the literal English words, sure, but it leaves you totally guessing about the actual context. For instance, finding out a deadline is under a fortnight doesn't actually give you the information you need. Is that 14 calendar days from the date printed on the letter, or is it from the date you actually opened it? These tools give you the words, but the meaning and the actual procedural reality, those remain completely hidden.
Okay, so the modern tech-savvy expat might turn next to AI, something like ChatGPT. And look, it is definitely a better interpreter, but it utterly fails what we can call the brown envelope test. Why? Well, 3 reasons. First, amnesia. It completely forgets your unique context, like your self-employment status or your rental income, every single session, which just exhausts you with constant context setting. Second, hallucinations. It will totally confidently invent fake procedural deadlines or reference bureaus that literally closed a decade ago. And when thousands of euros are on the line, that hallucination tax is just way too dangerous. And third, no dot connecting. It just can't compare an income figure from a letter you got today with a tax figure from 6 months ago.
Now, of course, there are human alternatives out there, but they come with their own heavy costs, right? You could rely on professional accountants, but at 60 to 120 euros an hour, that is just wildly expensive for routine mail. The other option? Asking your friend or partner.
But listen, this is a finite resource. It puts a quiet, ongoing tax on the relationship. Asking your partner to decode a CAF letter for the 5th time this year after they've had a long workday, that is not a free interaction. It breeds guilt, and it breeds silent frustration. Which perfectly brings us to the solution the source material introduces to solve this exact, precise problem. Enter friend. And what's really interesting here is that it's not some cluttered everything app trying to manage your taxes, your fitness, and your spirituality all at once. Instead, it is specifically designed as an architecture of calm. It is built deliberately for that slightly anxious minute when you first rip open that envelope.
So let's walk through exactly how this works, because the user experience here is just wonderfully frictionless. Step 1, you take a photo of the letter on your phone. Step 2, you upload it to the dashboard. Step 3, you get a calm, structured, plain English analysis in just 30 seconds. Under the hood, it's actually using highly calibrated optical character recognition, catching all those crucial French accents, and pairing it with large language models instructed specifically on French administrative context. But for you, the user, it is simply snap, upload, and understand. It's like magic. Every single letter you upload gets broken down into a super consistent 7-block structure. Let's just look at the absolute essentials here. Block 1 categorizes the letters so you immediately know the stakes. Block 2 extracts only the operative facts, totally stripping away all that confusing boilerplate text. Block 3 gives you concrete, highly specific action steps, and Block 5 plainly states exactly what happens if you ignore it. Because this format is completely consistent every single time, you eventually just stop trying to decipher the layout entirely, you just instantly understand the urgency and exactly what's required of you.
And I have to say, Block 4 is particularly ingenious. It gives you a calculated deadline. So instead of a vague, within 15 days, it gives you a precise calendar date, calculated directly from the letter's printed date, right down to the day of the week. This so elegantly removes all of that mental math. Seeing that a deadline is on a Monday instantly tells you if you need to rush out to the post office before the weekend, saving you from a whole lot of completely unnecessary Saturday morning panic.
Then we've got Block 6, the suggested reply. If the letter requires a response, the app actually drafts it for you in perfect, formal administrative French. We're talking the full, glorious Madame Monsieur and Je vous prie d'agréer mes salutations distinguées treatment. Users actually call this feature alone worth the price. It literally transforms what is normally a 3-week procrastination session of sheer dread into a 3-minute task. You literally just copy, edit slightly, sign, and post. Boom. Done.
So, the crucial point we need to talk about is Block 7. This right here is the killer feature. Connections. See, France Friend has a contextual memory. It actually remembers the income you declared 3 months ago or what your employment status is. When you upload a brand new letter, it connects the dots across multiple letters over time to flag administrative inconsistencies that a standalone AI or translator would just completely miss.
To put a real-world value on that kind of memory, let's look at this number right here. 1,800 euros. The source details this amazing case study where a British expat received what looked like a routine CAF recalculation. On its own, it looked totally fine, but the connections block flagged that the income figure the CAF was using was actually 4,300 euros lower than her recent tax notice. Now, this kind of mismatch triggers massive repayment demands 12 to 18 months later. By catching it instantly, she updated her profile and saved 1,800 euros in avoided repayment demands, not to mention the massive stress she avoided. And this brilliantly illustrates how the tool completely shifts you from a state of panic to a state of power. Take the URSSAF surprise case study. A freelancer gets a totally unexpected bill for 4,200 euros. Without France Friend, the typical reaction is to just panic pay, which instantly creates a massive cash flow crisis for them. But with the app, the analysis explains the calculation, notes that you can legally ask for a payment plan, and then it drafts the actual formal request to URSSAF. URSSAF agrees, the freelancer pays over 6 months, and their cash flow is entirely saved. It's providing actionable guidance rather than just delivering really bad news. Having a dedicated friend paying close attention on your behalf also stops bureaucratic domino effects and, crucially, scams. In one case, it caught a seemingly simple CPAM health regime change and warned the user that it would actually cascade into their mutual and their CAF supplements. This allowed them to make 2 quick phone calls and prevent a massive headache later on. In another case, it flagged a highly convincing 487 euro tax demand as an outright fake simply because the letter asked for an external bank transfer, which is a classic hallmark of a scam. It genuinely is like having a vigilant, highly trained accountant sitting securely on your shoulder. Which brings us to the ultimate question. Look, the French administrative state isn't changing its fonts or its incredibly archaic language anytime soon.
That slightly anxious minute at 5:30 p.m. is pretty much a permanent feature of expat life. But when that next dot matrix brown envelope arrives on your kitchen table, how much is your peace of mind really worth? Is it worth transforming a totally ruined evening of bureaucratic anxiety into a 2-minute, elegantly solved problem? Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer, and we will catch you in the next one.